My name is Pamela Williams, and at 67 years old, I never thought I would be betrayed by my own daughter. The small beach house in Cape Cod had been my sanctuary for 30 years, the place where I rebuilt my life after losing my husband. Then came the phone call that shattered everything. My daughter Jessica said those words that still echo in my mind. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." If only she knew what she had actually done. Before I share this heartbreaking story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button to join our community of life story lovers. I was born in a small town just outside Boston, Massachusetts, back when life seemed simpler. My parents were hardworking folks who believed in the value of education, so I worked my way through college and became an elementary school teacher. I met Thomas during my first year of teaching. He was the handsome janitor with a smile that could light up a room and dreams bigger than his paycheck. We fell in love quickly and married young when I was just 23 and he was 25. Thomas never made it big like he dreamed, but he provided for us. We lived modestly but happily in a small rental house, saving every penny we could. When I became pregnant with Jessica, Thomas took on extra shifts at a factory to build up our savings. Jessica was our miracle, our perfect little girl with her father's bright eyes and my stubborn determination. Life was good, not fancy, but filled with love. Then, when Jessica was 10 years old, tragedy struck without warning. Thomas collapsed at work one day. Heart failure, they said. Gone at just 43 years old. The world I knew shattered into a million pieces that day. The funeral was a blur of tears and condolences that did nothing to fill the gaping hole in our lives. When the dust settled, I found myself alone with a 10-year-old daughter, minimal savings, and a crushing grief that made it hard to breathe some days. The only substantial thing Thomas left us was a tiny rundown beach house in Cape Cod that he'd inherited from his uncle years before. It was hardly worth anything at the time, just a small cottage a few blocks from the water with peeling paint and creaky floors. "You should sell it," everyone told me. "You need the money now." But something in me couldn't let go of that house. It was the last tangible connection to Thomas, the only piece of him Jessica and I had left. Instead, I took on more work. I kept my teaching job during the day, waited tables at night, and spent weekends selling handmade crafts at local fairs. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, but we survived. Every summer, Jessica and I would spend 2 months at that beach house. At first, it was just to escape the memories that haunted our regular home. But over time, that little house became our sanctuary, our healing place. I would patch up one small thing each year, painting shutters one summer, fixing the porch railing the next. Jessica and I would collect seashells and arrange them on the windowsills. We would sit on the beach and talk about Thomas, keeping his memory alive through our stories. As Jessica grew older, she seemed to cherish those summers as much as I did. She would invite friends over, hosting bonfires on the beach, where they would roast marshmallows and tell ghost stories until dawn. I watched her heal there, watched her grow into a strong young woman with her whole life ahead of her. Our relationship was close back then. Jessica would tell me everything, her hopes, her dreams, her secret crushes. I was her confidant, her rock. But things began to change when she went to college. She met Gregory Hamilton during her sophomore year. He came from old money with a family name that opened doors and a trust fund that ensured he would never know struggle. When Jessica brought him home to meet me, I could see the stars in her eyes. I could also see the slight curl of his lip when he looked around our modest home, the subtle disdain in his voice when he talked about my teaching career. But Jessica was in love, so I smiled and welcomed him as best I could. They married right after graduation, a lavish affair that Gregory's parents paid for. I wore my one good dress and tried not to feel out of place among the designer gowns and diamond jewelry. Jessica looked beautiful, but somehow different, as if she was stepping into a new skin that I couldn't quite recognize. Over the next 15 years, I watched my daughter transform. The Jessica who once laughed at silly jokes and helped me garden was replaced by a woman obsessed with appearances and status. Her clothing became more expensive, her manner more refined, her visits home less frequent. When they did visit, Gregory would make comments about our quaint lifestyle, as if we were characters in a small-town novel, rather than real people. Despite this, I cherished my grandchildren fiercely. Emma came first, a serious child with thoughtful eyes who reminded me so much of Jessica at that age. Then Tyler, a bundle of energy with his grandfather's kindness shining through. During their early years, they would spend a few weeks each summer with me at the beach house, building sandcastles and collecting hermit crabs in plastic buckets. As time passed, Cape Cod became more desirable, and property values soared. My little rundown beach house was suddenly worth a small fortune, though I paid little attention to such things. I had retired from teaching by then, living on my modest pension and Social Security. I spent half the year at the beach house tending to my small garden and volunteering at the local library. Jessica began dropping hints about selling the house. "Think about it, Mom," she would say during her increasingly rare visits. "You could buy a nice condo in one of those senior communities. They have activities and medical staff on site. That old shack is probably a safety hazard anyway." I always refused gently but firmly. "This house is more than wood and nails, Jessica. It's where we healed after losing your father. It's where you grew up. Someday it will be yours and the children's. But for now, it's where I belong." She would press her lips together in that way. She had a gesture, so like her father that it made my heart ache, but she would let it drop, for a while at least, until the next visit when the cycle would begin again. I never imagined that my own daughter would take matters into her own hands. Never thought she would betray me in the most fundamental way possible. But life has a way of surprising you even at 67. The first sign that something was wrong came with a pain in my hands that I couldn't ignore anymore. I'd noticed the stiffness in my fingers for months, the way my knuckles would swell after a day of gardening, but I dismissed it as part of growing older. When I finally visited Dr. Marshall, his diagnosis wasn't a surprise. "Early-stage arthritis, Pamela," he said, looking at my x-rays. "Not uncommon for a woman your age. We can manage it with medication, but I recommend a minor surgical procedure on your right hand. It should help with the pain and improve mobility." I nodded, accepting this new challenge, as I had accepted others before it. "How long is the recovery?" "About 3 weeks for the initial healing, then physical therapy. You'll need help with daily tasks during that time. Is there someone who can assist you?" My first thought was to ask my neighbor Barbara, but before I could even mention it to her, Jessica called. It was unusual for her to call out of the blue, and I was surprised to hear genuine concern in her voice when I mentioned the surgery. "Mom, you can't recover alone in that house," she said firmly. "You'll stay with us. I insist." I was touched by her offer. It had been years since Jessica had shown such interest in my well-being. Perhaps this was an opportunity to bridge the growing distance between us. So I agreed, packing a small suitcase for what I thought would be a 3-week stay at her suburban Philadelphia home. Jessica and the children picked me up from the Cape Cod train station. Emma, now 14, gave me a shy hug while 12-year-old Tyler bounced excitedly beside the car, eager to tell me about his latest video game conquest. Jessica was unusually attentive, asking about my pain levels and making sure I was comfortable during the 3-hour drive to their home. Their house was exactly as I remembered it. A sprawling colonial in an exclusive neighborhood with perfectly manicured lawns and an interior that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. My room was the guest suite on the first floor, decorated in soothing blues and grays. Jessica had even placed fresh flowers on the nightstand, a gesture that brought tears to my eyes. "This is lovely, Jessica," I said, genuinely moved. "Thank you for taking me in." She smiled, patting my hand. "Family takes care of family, Mom." The first few days passed pleasantly enough. Gregory was often absent, working late at his investment firm or traveling for business. When he was home, he was cordial if distant, asking perfunctory questions about my health before retreating to his home office. It was during my second week there, while looking for a book to read in their library, that I overheard Jessica and Gregory arguing in his office next door. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their raised voices carried through the wall. "The Sanderson account was supposed to be foolproof," Gregory hissed. "How am I supposed to explain to the clients that their investment is gone? Can't you move some money around?" Jessica's voice was tense. "What about our personal accounts?" "Already done," Gregory replied. "We've had to cancel the Aspen trip, and Emma's horse might have to go too. Do you know how embarrassing it is to scale back when everyone at the club is upgrading their summer homes?" I moved away then, uncomfortable with what I'd heard. Financial troubles weren't uncommon even for people who seemed as secure as Jessica and Gregory. Still, something about their desperate tone unsettled me. The next day, while Jessica was driving me to a pre-surgery appointment, she began asking questions about the beach house. Had I kept up with the property taxes? Was the deed in my name only? Or had I added her as I once mentioned, I might? What was the current insurance coverage? I answered honestly, assuming she was concerned about the property while I was away. Everything's up to date, Jessica. Barbara checks on the house for me and brings in the mail. There's nothing to worry about. She nodded, seeming satisfied. You know, Mom, while you're recovering, we should look at your overall financial picture. Make sure everything's in order. At your age, it's important to have clear plans. Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was Jessica, my daughter, who had made macaroni necklaces for me and cried on my shoulder when she had her first heartbreak. 2 days before my surgery, Jessica brought a stack of documents to my room. Just some routine paperwork, she explained. A healthcare proxy so I can make medical decisions if necessary, and a power of attorney for while you're recovering. I should have read them carefully. I should have noticed how Jessica's eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, how her fingers tapped nervously against her thigh, but I trusted my daughter implicitly. I signed where she indicated, joking, that my signature might look different after they fixed my arthritic hand. The surgery went well, a fairly simple procedure to repair tendons and remove inflamed tissue. I expected to be back at the beach house within 3 weeks, as Dr. Marshall had suggested. But recovery didn't go as smoothly as anticipated. A minor infection developed at the incision site, requiring antibiotics and extended rest. You'll stay with us until you're completely healed, Jessica insisted when I mentioned returning home. It's no trouble at all. She was unusually attentive during this time, bringing me tea and helping me change the dressing on my hand. Gregory remained scarce, but when he was home, I sometimes caught him watching me with an odd expression, calculating and cold. 4 weeks into my stay, Emma let something slip during our afternoon together. She was showing me her science project when she mentioned, I'll miss my friends when we move, but Dad says Florida has even better beaches than Cape Cod. Move? I asked, confused. Your family is moving to Florida. Emma's eyes widened and she backpedaled quickly. I mean, if we ever moved. It's just something Dad talks about sometimes. Hey, want to see the shell collection? I started last summer. I let her change the subject, but the comment lingered in my mind. That night at dinner, I casually mentioned it to Jessica. Emma mentioned something about Florida today. Are you considering a move? Jessica froze momentarily, her fork halfway to her mouth. Then she smiled too brightly. Oh, it's just one of Gregory's pipe dreams. You know how he is always planning the next big thing. I nodded, but something felt off. That night I couldn't sleep. The beach house key felt heavy in my jewelry case, a talisman of independence that suddenly seemed important to hold on to. The uneasy feeling grew stronger, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Jessica was my daughter. She wouldn't betray my trust. How wrong I was. 5 weeks after my surgery, I was sitting in the sunroom reading when my cell phone rang. It was Barbara, my neighbor from Cape Cod. Pamela, her voice crackled through the speaker. Are you allowing someone to show your house? There's been a real estate agent here twice this week with different couples walking through the property. My heart seemed to stop momentarily. What? No, there must be some mistake. I'm not selling the house. Well, someone is Barbara said firmly. There's a for sale sign in the front yard that wasn't there last week. I would have called sooner, but I thought maybe you'd decided to sell after your surgery. I thanked her, my mind racing, and promised to look into it. When I confronted Jessica that evening, she was evasive, claiming she had no idea what Barbara was talking about, and suggesting my neighbor might be confused. Maybe they're showing a different house on the street, she offered, not quite meeting my eyes. You know how similar those old cottages look. I might have believed her if not for what I overheard that night. Unable to sleep, I went to the kitchen for a glass of water. Voices drifted from Gregory's office, heated and urgent. The closing is in 3 days, Gregory was saying. We need to get her signature on these final documents before she finds out. I know that Jessica snapped back. I'm doing my best, but she's asking questions. That nosy neighbor of hers called today. Well, handle it, Gregory replied coldly. We need this money, Jess. Everything depends on closing this deal before she realizes what's happening. I retreated silently to my room, my mind struggling to process what I'd heard. They were selling my house, my sanctuary, without my knowledge. Using the power of attorney I'd signed, Jessica had put my beloved beach house on the market. The betrayal was so profound that I could barely breathe. The next morning, Jessica entered my room with a tense smile, a cup of tea in her hand. She set it down and perched on the edge of my bed, her posture stiff. "Mom, we need to talk," she began, her voice falsely bright. "I have some news that might be a bit of a shock at first, but I promise it's for the best." I looked at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face, and waited. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." Despite having overheard their conversation the night before, hearing the words spoken aloud sent a physical pain through my chest. Jessica continued speaking her words, coming faster, as if to outrun my reaction. "The market is really hot right now, and it makes no sense for you to keep that old place. You can't manage it alone anymore, not with your health issues. The sale is almost final, $1.2 million. That's a great price, enough to keep you comfortable in a really nice assisted living facility." When I didn't respond, she added, "Gregory found a wonderful opportunity in Florida. A fresh start for our family. The money from the house will help us transition, and there will be plenty left for your care. It's a win-win situation." "You sold my house without my permission," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You had no right, Jessica." She straightened, her expression hardening. "Actually, I had every right. The power of attorney you signed gives me full authority to make financial decisions on your behalf. I'm doing what's best for everyone." "That house is my home," I said, my voice growing stronger with anger. "It's where your father and I built our life, where you grew up. How could you sell it without even talking to me?" Jessica sighed dramatically, as if I were a child having a tantrum. "Mom, it's just a house. An old rundown shack that's falling apart. You're being silly and sentimental about some wood and nails. Think about what that money can do for all of us." "All of us," I repeated. "Or just you and Gregory?" Her face flushed. "That's not fair. We're thinking about your future, too. You can't live alone anymore, especially not in that death trap of a house. One fall down those rickety stairs and you'd be done for." "So this is about my safety?" I asked, knowing it was a lie. Jessica had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but pushed on. "Partly. But yes, we need this too. Gregory's firm has been struggling. We've had some financial setbacks." "So you're stealing my house to fix your financial problems," I said flatly. "It's not stealing," she exclaimed. "The money is still yours technically. It's just being managed by me through the trust we set up." "What trust?" I asked, my blood running cold. "I never set up any trust." Jessica's expression became smugly superior. "Yes, you did. Among those documents you signed before your surgery was a transfer of assets into a family trust that I control as trustee. It was all completely legal." I was speechless with shock and betrayal. My own daughter had tricked me into signing away my home, my independence, my security. "How much?" I finally asked. "What? How much did you sell my house for?" "You said $1.2 million. The property was appraised last year at $1.8 million. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "We needed a quick sale. The market isn't as good as it was." Another lie. Barbara had told me just months ago that a similar house on our street had sold for over $2 million. Jessica had practically given away my house, desperate for fast cash. "And what about my things? My photographs, your father's belongings, all the memories stored in that house?" "We've packed the important stuff," Jessica said dismissively. "It's being shipped to us in Florida, the rest. Well, most of it was just junk anyway." Junk. My life with Thomas reduced to junk. The shell collections, the handcrafted furniture he had made, the driftwood sculptures we had created together on rainy beach days, all dismissed as worthless trash. "And where exactly am I supposed to go while you start your new life in Florida with the proceeds from my home?" I asked, ice in my voice. "Sunny Pines Senior Living," Jessica replied, producing a glossy brochure from her pocket. "It's very nice. Activities, medical staff on site, 3 meals a day. Your Social Security and pension should cover most of the monthly fees." I looked at the brochure without taking it. The facility pictured looked institutional and cold, nothing like the warm, memory-filled rooms of my beach house. "And if I refuse?" I asked quietly. Jessica's expression hardened. "You don't have a choice, Mom. The papers are signed, the deal is done. We leave tomorrow. A representative from Sunny Pines will come to transport you there directly." "I'll fight this," I said. "I'll get a lawyer." Jessica actually laughed, a cold sound I'd never heard from her before. With what money, your bank accounts have been transferred to the trust as well. Besides, everything was done legally. You signed the documents. Unter false Prätenses, I countered. She shrugged. Prove it. Meanwhile, I suggest you start packing what you want to take with you. Sunny Pines has limited storage space. She left the room, then leaving me sitting in stunned silence. My own child had betrayed me, completely stealing not just my house but my very autonomy. She had planned it methodically, taking advantage of my trust and vulnerability after surgery. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest. I thought of Thomas, of the promises we had made to each other, to always look after Jessica, to make sure she was safe and loved. What would he think of the woman she had become? Emma knocked tentatively on my door later that day, her young face troubled. Grandma? Are you okay? Mom said you were upset about selling the beach house. Did she tell you I agreed to sell it? I asked gently. Emma nodded, then looked uncertain. That's what Dad said. But you seem so sad about it. I love that house very much, I said simply. There are a lot of special memories there. I love it too, Emma whispered. The seashell wind chimes on the porch and how you can hear the ocean at night. Dad says Florida beaches are better, but I don't think anything could be better than your house. I hugged her close, this precious granddaughter who somehow had escaped becoming as materialistic as her parents. Thank you for saying that, Emma. That night I lay awake planning my next move. Jessica had stolen my home, but I wasn't going down without a fight. Thomas had always said I was the strongest woman he knew. It was time to prove him right. The morning after Jessica's revelation brought a flurry of activity to the house. Boxes appeared in the hallway, movers arrived to load furniture into a truck, and Gregory was on the phone constantly, his voice tense as he confirmed details of their Florida relocation. Through it all, I sat quietly in my room, still weak from surgery and reeling from betrayal. When I tried to call Linda, my old friend from law school, who had become a family attorney, Jessica, appeared as if from nowhere and plucked the phone from my hand. Who are you calling, Mom? She asked, her voice falsely sweet but her eyes hard. My friend Linda, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I'd like to let her know I'm moving. I'll handle notifying your friends, Jessica said, slipping my phone into her pocket. You should rest. It's going to be a busy day. I nodded docilely, knowing that any resistance now would only make Jessica more vigilant. Instead, I smiled weakly. You're right. I am tired. Jessica seemed relieved at my apparent acceptance of the situation. Good. Try to see this as an opportunity, Mom. A new chapter. Sunny Pines has bridge clubs and movie nights. You'll make friends. After she left, I sat on my bed feeling physically trapped. My hand was still healing, making me partially dependent. My phone was gone. My money was gone. My home was gone. Jessica had orchestrated my isolation perfectly. But she had forgotten one thing: she wasn't the only one in this house. Later that afternoon, Gregory came into my room without knocking. He had never been warm toward me, but now he didn't even bother with the pretense of respect. The movers need to know which suitcase you're taking to Sunny Pines, he said, without preamble. They're loading our stuff for Florida now. Where are my things from the beach house? I asked. My photo albums, Thomas's workbench, our family heirlooms. Gregory shrugged dismissively. Jessica handled all that. Some stuff is coming to Florida, the furniture was sold with the house, and the rest was donated. Taking care of the elderly is expensive, Pamela. We all have to make sacrifices. The casual cruelty of his words left me speechless. I had never been a burden on them, had never asked for their financial support. Yet here was Gregory acting as if selling my home out from under me was some kind of favor. When he left, I slowly made my way to Jessica's home office, hoping to find some information about what had actually happened to my belongings. What I found broke my heart all over again. On her desk lay a list titled Beach House Contents. Next to most items were notations, Donate trash sell at estate sale. Thomas's handcrafted chess set that he had made for Jessica's 16th birthday was marked sell. The box of letters he had written me during our courtship was marked trash. Our family photos were nowhere on the list. I sank into Jessica's desk chair, overwhelmed by the callousness of it all. These weren't just things. They were the physical manifestations of our family history, tangible connections to Thomas and the life we had built. And Jessica had discarded them as carelessly as last week's garbage. I was still sitting there numb with grief when Emma found me. Her young face was troubled, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. "Grandma, are you okay?" she asked, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Not really, sweetheart," I admitted. "I'm sad about losing so many special things from the beach house." Emma bit her lip, then whispered, "I saved something for you." From her pocket, she pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was the silver seashell necklace Thomas had given me on our last anniversary before he died. Mom was going to sell it, but I took it. "It's yours, right?" I clutched the necklace, tears filling my eyes. "Yes, Emma. Thank you. This means more to me than you can know." Emma glanced nervously toward the door, then pulled her own phone from her pocket. "Do you want to use my phone? Mom took yours?" This precious child, this one small light in the darkness of betrayal. I kissed her forehead and took the phone gratefully. "Just for a few minutes. I need to call my friend Linda." Emma stood guard at the door while I quickly dialed Linda's number. When she answered, I spoke rapidly, explaining the situation in hushed tones. "They tricked me into signing a power of attorney and some kind of trust documents. They've sold my beach house and are shipping me off to a nursing home tomorrow. I need help, Linda." Linda's outrage was immediate and comforting. "This is elder abuse, Pamela. I'll be there first thing tomorrow morning with the police if necessary. Just hold tight until then." I had just ended the call when Jessica's voice rang out from the hallway. "Emma, where are you? The packing service needs to know which of your books you're taking." Emma quickly took her phone back, squeezing my hand reassuringly before hurrying to answer her mother. I made my way back to the guest room, feeling the first stirring of hope since this nightmare began. That hope was short-lived. That evening, as I was picking at the dinner Tyler had brought to my room, Jessica burst in her face, flushed with anger. "You called a lawyer," she demanded, waving Emma's phone. I checked Emma's call history. "How dare you go behind my back like this?" I met her gaze steadily. "How dare I? You stole my home, Jessica. You tricked me into signing away everything I own. What did you expect me to do?" "I expected you to trust that I know what's best," she shouted. "I'm trying to take care of everyone. Can't you see that?" "No," I said quietly. "I see a daughter who values money over her mother's happiness, who values appearances over family history." Jessica's composure cracked, and the truth finally spilled out. "We're broke, Mom. Completely broke. Gregory's firm is under investigation for mismanaging client funds. He's been gambling, taking risky investments, trying to cover his tracks. We're about to lose everything." "So you decided to steal my everything instead," I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. "It's not stealing," Jessica insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "The beach house money is buying us a fresh start in Florida. Gregory has a job offer there away from the scandal. We can rebuild." "And what about my fresh start?" I asked. "What about my life?" Jessica's expression hardened. "Sunny Pines is the cheapest facility we could find that still has an available bed. Your Social Security will cover most of the monthly cost. You'll be fine." "The cheapest facility," I repeated, feeling ill. "Not the wonderful place you described yesterday." Jessica had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but rallied quickly. "You always said family comes first, Mom." "Well, my family needs this money more than you need that old house." "I am your family too, Jessica," I said softly. She looked away. "You've had your life. Now it's our turn." After she stormed out, I sat in shocked silence, trying to reconcile this cold, calculating woman with the daughter I had raised. How had I missed the signs of her transformation? When had money and status become more important to her than basic human decency? Later that night, as I lay sleepless in bed, I overheard Jessica talking to the children in the hallway. "Grandma is becoming confused and a little senile," she was saying in a hushed voice. "That's why she's upset about the move. The doctors at Sunny Pines will help her." Another betrayal, another knife to my heart. Not content with stealing my home and possessions, Jessica was now trying to steal my dignity, painting me as mentally incompetent to her own children. Tyler's voice drifted through the door. "But Grandma doesn't seem confused to me. She remembers all the stories about Grandpa and tells them the same way every time." "That's different," Jessica replied dismissively. "Old people can remember the past but get confused about the present. Just be extra nice to her tomorrow, okay? It's going to be a difficult day for everyone." Difficult didn't begin to describe what tomorrow would bring, but not in the way Jessica imagined. As I finally drifted off to sleep, Thomas's silver seashell necklace clutched in my hand, I felt a calm determination settle over me. Jessica thought she had won, but she had forgotten the most important lesson I had taught her as a child. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. The morning of departure arrived with a chaotic energy permeating the house. Movers trampled up and down the stairs carrying the last of the boxes. Gregory barked orders into his phone while checking his watch every few minutes. The children sat quietly at the kitchen table, picking at their breakfast cereal, their young faces solemn in the midst of the adult storm around them. Jessica appeared in my doorway, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour, her expression a mask of efficient determination. "Time to get ready, Mom," she announced, placing a single suitcase on my bed. "The car from Sunny Pines will be here in 2 hours. You can take whatever fits in this." I looked at the medium-sized suitcase, barely large enough for a week's worth of clothing, let alone the remnants of my life that I had brought to Jessica's house. "What about my books, my winter clothes, my photo albums?" I asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear her say it. Jessica sighed impatiently. "We don't have room to transport all that to Florida, and Sunny Pines has limited storage. We'll ship the important things to you later." Another lie. There would be no later shipment, just as there had been no consideration for my treasured possessions from the beach house. Once I was safely deposited at Sunny Pines, Jessica and Gregory would wash their hands of me taking their fresh start funded by my loss. "I see," I said quietly, beginning to fold clothes into the suitcase with my good hand. "Could you send Emma and Tyler in to say goodbye? I'd like some time with them before I leave." Jessica hesitated, perhaps sensing something in my tone, but nodded. 5 minutes. We're on a tight schedule." When my grandchildren entered, I embraced them both, tightly memorizing the feel of their young bodies against mine, the smell of Tyler's apple shampoo, the subtle floral perfume Emma had recently begun to wear. "I'm going to miss you both so much," I told them, fighting back tears. "Why can't you come to Florida with us?" Tyler asked, his lower lip trembling. "I don't want you to live with old people you don't know." I smoothed his hair back from his forehead, just as I used to do for Jessica when she was his age. Sometimes in life we don't get what we want, but we have to make the best of what we have. I reached into my jewelry case and removed 2 small packages wrapped in tissue paper. "I want you each to have something to remember me by." For Emma, I had wrapped Thomas's pocket watch, its silver case engraved with his initials. For Tyler, a small carved wooden box that Thomas had made containing smooth beach stones we had collected together over the years. "These belong to your grandfather," I explained as they unwrapped their gifts. "He would want you to have them." "Dad says we shouldn't talk about Grandpa," Emma said quietly. "He says it makes you sad." "Your grandfather was the best man I ever knew," I told them firmly. "Being sad that he's gone doesn't mean I don't want to remember him. Never let anyone tell you not to speak of those you've lost." Tyler nodded solemnly, then reached into his backpack. "I made this for you," he said, presenting me with a carefully folded piece of paper. It was a drawing of the beach house, surprisingly detailed for a 12-year-old, with the seashell wind chimes on the porch and the old oak tree in the yard. "So you don't forget," he explained. "Mom says old people forget things." I hugged him again, this precious boy who saw more than his parents realized. "I will never forget Tyler. Thank you." Emma glanced toward the door, then quickly pressed a folded note into my hand. "Our new address and my phone number," she whispered. "I'll call you whenever I can." The door opened then, Jessica appearing with an impatient expression. "Time's up. The Sunny Pines van just called. They'll be here in 30 minutes. As the children filed out, I finished packing my single suitcase carefully, including Thomas's necklace, the children's gifts, and the few mementos I couldn't bear to leave behind. A strange calm had settled over me, the kind that comes with absolute clarity of purpose. When the doorbell rang, I was sitting in the living room, dressed in a simple blue dress that Thomas had always loved, my silver hair neatly combed. The Sunny Pines representative was a tired-looking woman in a navy uniform who introduced herself as Diane. "Mrs. Williams, I'm here to transport you to our facility," she said, her tone professional but kind. "Just a moment," I replied. "My daughter and her family are leaving for Florida today. I'd like to say goodbye." Jessica was directing the movers with the last of their luggage, barely acknowledging Diane's presence. Gregory was already in their SUV, the engine running, his expression impatient. The children stood awkwardly on the front lawn, Emma clutching her grandfather's watch. Tyler repeatedly glancing back at me. "Jessica," I called, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "A moment, please." My daughter turned, an artificial smile fixed on her face for Diane's benefit. "Yes, Mom." "Is there a problem?" "You're forgetting something important," I said calmly. Jessica glanced at her checklist. "I don't think so. The movers have everything on the inventory." "Not the inventory," I said, stepping closer. "Something else entirely." Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" I smiled then, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and triumph. "The beach house you sold. It wasn't mine to sell." Jessica's expression froze. "What?" "5 years ago, after I noticed Gregory's spending habits and your increasing hints about selling the house, I met with an attorney. I transferred the beach house to a living trust with very specific terms." Jessica's face had gone pale. "That's impossible. The deed was in your name." We checked. "The deed you found in my files was an old copy," I explained. "The current deed is held by the trust. The power of attorney you tricked me into signing has no authority over trust property. You sold a house that wasn't legally available to sell." Gregory had emerged from the car, approaching with thunderclouds in his expression. "What's going on? We need to leave now." Jessica turned to him, panic breaking through her composed facade. "She says the beach house is in some kind of trust, that we couldn't sell it." Gregory's face flushed dark red. "That's ridiculous. We had a title search done. It's clean." "Not if you were looking at outdated records," I said. "The trust was established under a slightly different name variation to protect against exactly this scenario. Margaret Pamela Williams. Trust not Pamela Margaret Williams, as on my other documents." The implications dawned on Gregory's face like a slow-moving storm. "The buyer's check will bounce," he said slowly. "The title company won't be able to transfer clear ownership." "The moving trucks," Jessica gasped. "The new job. Our flight tomorrow. All based on money you don't have and won't be getting from my house I finished for her." Gregory exploded, then his carefully maintained veneer of sophistication cracking completely. "You manipulative old witch! Do you have any idea what you've done? We're financially ruined." "No, Gregory," I corrected calmly. "You ruined yourselves through greed and poor decisions. I simply protected what was mine." Emma and Tyler had drawn closer, witnessing the scene with wide eyes. Gregory didn't seem to notice or care that his true character was on full display before his children. "This is your fault," he snarled at Jessica. "You were supposed to handle your mother, make sure everything was in order. Now we're worse than broke, we're homeless and in debt." "Don't you dare blame this on me," Jessica fired back. "You're the one who lost our savings on your gambling and risky investments." As they turned on each other, Diane from Sunny Pines stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Mrs. Williams, in light of this situation, would you prefer I take you somewhere other than our facility, perhaps to a friend's home?" I looked at my daughter and son-in-law, still arguing bitterly on the lawn. I looked at my grandchildren, witnesses to the ugly truth of their parents' actions. Then I looked at Diane, whose eyes held a knowing compassion. "Yes," I said quietly. "I think that would be best." Diane helped me into the Sunny Pines van as Jessica and Gregory's argument escalated on the front lawn. Emma and Tyler stood frozen, their young faces stricken as their parents hurled accusations at each other, oblivious to their children's distress or the neighbors peering curiously from windows. "I can take you wherever you need to go," Diane said as she started the engine. "Sunny Pines isn't right for you, that much is clear." "My friend Linda," I replied, giving her the address. "She's an attorney. She's expecting me tomorrow, but I think today would be better." As we pulled away, I saw Emma and Tyler waving forlornly from the driveway. I waved back, my heart breaking for them, even as relief flooded through me at my narrow escape. I had lost so much, but not everything. Not my freedom, not my dignity, and most importantly, not my home. Linda's shock was evident when she opened her door to find me standing there with Diane and a single suitcase. "Pamela, I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. What happened?" Over cups of strong tea at her kitchen table, I explained everything while Diane listened with professional interest. When I finished, Linda's expression was a mixture of outrage and admiration. The trust was brilliant foresight, she said. But what Jessica and Gregory did is still elder abuse and fraud. We can press charges if you want to. I considered this, picturing my grandchildren's faces. Let's hold that as a last resort. Right now, I just want to go home and assess the damage. Linda insisted I stay the night with her, and the next morning she drove me back to Cape Cod. As we approached the beach house, I braced myself for what we might find. The for sale sign still stood in the front yard, but the house itself looked relatively untouched from the outside. Barbara came rushing from next door as soon as we pulled up. "Pamela, thank God you're back," she exclaimed, hugging me carefully. "Those people had no right to sell your house out from under you. I told that real estate agent something fishy was going on." "Thank you for calling me," I said gratefully. "You probably saved me from ending up in a cut-rate nursing home." Inside was another story. The house had been partially packed up with empty spaces where furniture had stood for decades. Thomas's reading chair was gone from its corner by the fireplace. The bookshelf he had built stood empty, our collection of classics and beach reads nowhere to be seen. But the real devastation was in what they had deemed unworthy of taking or selling. In the trash bins outside, Linda found photo albums, their pages ripped and water damaged from being left in the rain. My gardening journals documenting 30 years of coastal plantings had been used as packing material and discarded. Thomas's workshop in the basement had been emptied of tools, leaving only sawdust and memories. "We can file for damages," Linda said, her phone already in hand. "Document everything they took or destroyed." I nodded, numbly overwhelmed by the casual cruelty of it all. It wasn't just things they had taken, but pieces of my history, tangible connections to the life I had built with Thomas. Linda stayed with me that first week, helping me reclaim my home and my legal identity. We contacted the would-be buyers, who were understanding once the situation was explained. They had sensed something was off during the rushed sale process, and were relieved not to be entangled in a fraudulent transaction. With Linda's help, I filed for a restraining order against Jessica and Gregory, though it hurt my heart to take such a step against my own daughter. We also began the process of reclaiming my financial accounts and undoing the damage from the fraudulent trust Jessica had created. Word of my situation spread quickly through our small community. Neighbors appeared with casseroles and offers of help. My former students, now adults, with children of their own, stopped by with plants for my garden and books to replace my lost collection. Barbara organized a refurnishing party, where community members donated furniture and household items to fill the empty spaces. Through it all, I grieved not just for what I had lost, but for the daughter I had raised and somehow lost along the way. How had my kind, thoughtful Jessica transformed into a person capable of such calculated betrayal? What had I missed in her upbringing that allowed money and status to become more important than family loyalty and basic decency? 2 weeks after my return home, my phone rang with Jessica's number. I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready to hear whatever justification or manipulation she might attempt. Her message was terse. The deal fell through. Gregory's job offer was contingent on us having the money from the house sale. Call me back. I didn't. Instead, I focused on healing both my hand and my heart. I planted new flowers in the garden, joined a watercolor class at the senior center, and began volunteering at the local library again. Life went on, shaped by loss, but not defined by it. Emma called me secretly from her mother's phone about a month after they had left for Florida. "We're staying in a motel," she whispered. "Dad left last week. He said it was Mom's fault, everything went wrong. Mom cries all the time." My heart ached for my grandchildren caught in the middle of their parents' mess. "Are you and Tyler okay?" I asked, trying to keep the worry from my voice. "I guess," Emma replied uncertainly. "Mom got a job at a restaurant, but it doesn't pay much. She says we might have to move to a smaller place soon." After I hung up, I sat on my porch watching the waves, Thomas's seashell necklace, cool against my skin. The anger I had nursed began to shift, making room for something more complicated. Jessica had betrayed me terribly, but she was still my daughter. Emma and Tyler were innocent victims of their parents' poor choices. 2 months after my escape from Sunny Pines, my phone rang again with Jessica's number. This time I answered. "Mom." Her voice was small, nothing like the confident tone she had used when informing me she had sold my house. "I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. So sorry for everything." "Where are you, Jessica?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "A small apartment in Jacksonville," she replied. Gregory's gone. The gambling debts were worse than I knew. He's somewhere in Vegas now, trying to win enough to pay off the loan sharks. And the children. They're here, she said, her voice breaking. They hate me. They know what we tried to do to you. Emma won't even look at me anymore. I closed my eyes, picturing my grandchildren in some sparse apartment, their world upended by adult greed and poor decisions. We're barely making it, Jessica continued, her voice shaking. I'm waitressing double shifts, but it's not enough for this place. We might end up in a shelter next month. Part of me, the wounded part that still smarted from her betrayal, thought she deserved this reversal of fortune. But another part, the mother who had held her through childhood nightmares and celebrated her accomplishments, couldn't bear the thought of my grandchildren suffering. What do you want from me, Jessica? I asked directly. There was a long pause before she answered. A second chance, she whispered. Not for me, for Emma and Tyler. After we hung up, I consulted with Linda about the legal implications of helping Jessica and the children. I spoke with my therapist about the emotional wisdom of allowing them back into my life. I walked the beach for hours, imagining what Thomas would advise if he were still by my side. In the end, the decision came down to one simple truth. Family was still family even when deeply flawed. I could protect myself without closing my heart completely. I called Jessica back the next day with an offer and conditions that would change all our lives. 6 months after Jessica's desperate phone call, the beach house had transformed in ways I never imagined. The spare bedroom that once held Thomas's book collection now belonged to Tyler, his walls covered with marine biology posters and his shelves displaying the seashell collection he had started. The sun porch had become Emma's study space, where she worked diligently on her homework with a view of the Atlantic that never failed to inspire. And in the small cottage at the back of the property, originally built as Thomas's workshop, Jessica lived independently, walking the fine line between rebuilding her relationship with me and maintaining healthy boundaries. The transition hadn't been easy. When Jessica and the children first arrived from Florida, hollow-eyed and wary, I had welcomed them with clear terms. They could stay temporarily while Jessica found local employment and saved for her own place. She would attend family therapy with me and the children. And most importantly, she would sign legal documents, acknowledging the Beach House Trust and relinquishing any claim to management of my financial affairs. Why are you helping us? Jessica had asked that first night after the children had gone to bed, after what we tried to do to you. I'm not doing it for you, I answered honestly. I'm doing it for Emma and Tyler, and because holding on to anger would only poison what years I have left. Those first weeks were awkward and tense. Jessica alternated between genuine remorse and flashes of the entitled attitude that had led to her downfall. The children watched us warily, as if expecting another explosion that would upend their lives again. Family therapy sessions were painful but necessary. Under the gentle guidance of Dr. Peterson, we excavated years of misunderstandings and unspoken expectations. Jessica revealed that she had always felt inadequate compared to her wealthy friends, ashamed of our modest lifestyle after Thomas died. I acknowledged that perhaps I had been too focused on preserving the past, failing to see how Jessica was struggling to establish her own identity. Your father and I wanted you to value people over things, I told Jessica during one particularly difficult session. Somewhere along the way, that message got lost. Gregory made me feel special, Jessica admitted. His world seemed so secure, so permanent. I wanted that security more than anything. There's no security in material things, I replied, thinking of how quickly Jessica and Gregory's carefully constructed life had collapsed. Only in knowing who you are and what truly matters. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Jessica found a job at the local community college teaching administrative skills. She was good at it, finding satisfaction in helping others that had eluded her in the pursuit of status. The children began to relax, putting down roots in the community where I had lived for so long. I converted the beach house into a small bed and breakfast, just 4 rooms that I rented to vacationers during the summer months. The income supplemented my pension nicely, and I enjoyed sharing the beauty of Cape Cod with visitors. Emma helped with breakfast service on weekends, developing a talent for hospitality that surprised us all. Tyler became my gardening assistant, his young hands eager to learn how to nurture growing things. As summer turned to fall, and then to winter, our strange new family configuration settled into a rhythm. We weren't the same as before everything had imploded, but perhaps we were something better, more honest. The betrayal had stripped away pretenses, forcing us to see each other as we truly were flawed but worthy of second chances. I updated my trust with Linda's help, establishing provisions for my grandchildren's education, while ensuring that the controls I had put in place remained strong. The beach house would never again be at risk from poor financial decisions or greed. Jessica gradually earned back small measures of trust. She contributed to household expenses, respected my boundaries, and worked hard in therapy to understand the choices that had led her to betray her own mother. When she eventually started dating again, she chose a local teacher whose modest lifestyle and kind heart were worlds away from Gregory's flashy charm. One evening, about a year after Jessica's return, we sat together on the beach watching the sunset. Emma and Tyler were collecting shells at the water's edge, their laughter carrying on the salt breeze. "I don't deserve this second chance," Jessica said quietly, watching her children. "I know that." "None of us get what we deserve, good or bad," I replied. "We get what life gives us, and what matters is how we handle it." "You handled betrayal with more grace than I would have," she admitted. I thought about this watching the golden light play across the waves. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn that holding on to anger only hurts yourself. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about choosing freedom over bitterness. "I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately," Jessica said. "About what he would think of all this." "He would be heartbroken by what happened," I said truthfully, "but overjoyed by where we are now." Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. "I miss him. I wish the kids had known him." "They know him through us," I said, touching Thomas's seashell necklace that I still wore every day. "Through the stories we tell, the values we live by." As darkness fell and we called the children to come inside, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. Jessica's betrayal had nearly cost me everything, but in losing so much, I had ultimately gained something precious: wisdom, resilience, and a family rebuilt on honesty rather than obligation. The beach house still stood as it had for decades, weathering storms both natural and emotional. Its walls held memories of Thomas, of Jessica's childhood, and now of Emma and Tyler's adolescence. But it was no longer just a repository of the past. It had become a living, evolving home for our imperfect family as we moved forward together. Perhaps that was the deepest lesson of all, that true wealth isn't found in property or bank accounts, but in the wisdom to protect yourself even from those you love, the strength to set boundaries while keeping your heart open, and the playman and the wasp in N4. Capacity to forge something new and valuable from the ashes of betrayal. The house Jessica had tried to sell wasn't just a structure of wood and nails after all. It was the physical embodiment of resilience, of survival, of the enduring power of forgiveness without forgetting. And that was a legacy worth protecting. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your stories in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Remember that sometimes our greatest pain can lead to our most profound growth. Thank you for joining me today, and may you find the wisdom to protect what matters most while keeping your heart open to life's possibilities.